All right, so I thought that the time would be perfect here to have what I like to call the great debate. This is Ryan Fields here on the right. He's my coworker at AT&T Stadium, the Dallas Cowboys, and him and I have been arguing about Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson since the middle of July when we had to rank our top 5 quarterbacks. And I didn't have Lamar Jackson in my top 5, and honestly, at this point, I will admit that I'm wrong. I like to have a flexible mindset, and I will admit that on that occasion I was wrong. But I don't think that I'm wrong by having Josh Allen as my MVP. Ryan has Lamar Jackson as his MVP. That's what we're debating today. Who deserves MVP this year? Um, Ryan's got his case. I've got my case. We're gonna duke it out here. I want to start this off by saying that I think that this is by far the hardest MVP that we've had to decide in at least 5 years. This is going to come down to the wire. Both Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen provide a very compelling case, and I'll be honest, I've been flirting with giving my vote to Saquon or Derrick Henry. And so I may at the end of the day, I may not even go quarterback depending on what happens these next 2 weeks. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to Sunday evening at 6:40 p.m. Eastern, 5:40 p.m. Central when they go up against each other in Buffalo. And so, Ryan, I'm glad to have you on here, and I'm going to let you state your case first for why Lamar Jackson should be the MVP of the NFL this year for the second year in a row.
Yeah, man. Thanks. First off, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on the era in the stream yard. We've always talked about this, and now we have it broadcast across the country.
It's
So
a reality.
can't ask. Yeah, it's dreams turn to reality. Why do I think Lamar Jackson should be the MVP? I mean, of course, we had our discussions, but for the people who haven't heard, I mean, Lamar Jackson leads every stat known to man this season compared to Josh Allen. I mean, MVP is all about what have you done for me lately? What are your stats like? So I just go down the list. I mean, all the stats that we care about over the years. I mean, the Tom Brady debate versus Peyton Manning, all those debates, Drew Brees versus Tom Brady, those MVP debates. I mean, we're having the same debate now with Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. What are your stats like? Lamar Jackson, guys, has over 4,000 yards compared to Josh Allen. I mean, you guys have seen the stats over and over again. He leads in every category: touchdowns, 41 to 4, pass touchdowns to interception ratio. He has 400 more rushing yards, higher completion percentage. People always talk about Lamar Jackson's accuracy and was he able to be a competent NFL passer. He struggled early on in his career. We all know that. But he's answered the bell. He's answered the call this season. And I don't think, we should penalize him for not winning. I mean, I know we get, MVP. He's won the MVP the last 2 seasons. I don't see why not this season. He has the stats. He had these are the best stats he's had in his whole career. So compared to Josh Allen, he should win off that alone. His team is better, sure. I mean, I know we'll get to that in a second here, but he's the most valuable player. If you take Lamar Jackson off this Ravens team, you'll get the Tennessee Titans with Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry. That's all you get. They don't have, they don't have a notable receiver, Rashard Bateman. Yeah, sure. I mean, Lamar Jackson made him break out this season. He doesn't have a true number one receiver outside of Zay Flowers. So that's my argument there. That's why Lamar Jackson should be the MVP. His stats alone and the way his team is set up around him. If he's off that team, you have, like I said, a Tennessee Titans team.
Okay, so this is where it becomes tough for me because like you were saying, Lamar Jackson has had such a statistically impressive season, and he's been so fun to watch, and he has delivered so much value to the Baltimore Ravens this year that you're almost put in a position here when you're voting on MVP to neglect that. And I hate that because both of these players have such great resumes and they've done such great things. At the end of the day, you've got to decide on one guy. And in a way, you feel like when you decide on one guy, you're forgoing what the other guy did and you're overlooking what he did. And I hate being in that position. It's like being put between a rock and a hard place. His stats are incredible, and I acknowledge that. There's one piece of your argument that I'm going to poke a hole in here. If you take Lamar Jackson off of the Ravens, they become the Tennessee Titans with Ryan Tannehill. That's simply not true because it's a very layered offense. They got Choppa in the chat trying to say Dak Prescott's better than both. Yeah, get the hell out of here, man. Get that weak shit out of here. No, going back to what I was saying here. There are several stars on Baltimore, right? Like you've got several guys on that team that are special. Derrick Henry, of course, it goes without saying. Lamar Jackson himself. And then you've got Zay Flowers. You've got the two-headed monster with Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. That two tight end system, the dynamic that those two have is incredible. I'm with you, Rashad Bateman. Like it's not eye-popping the rest of the receiving corps, but there's several guys on that team that are special. And then defensively, you look, and you've got Roquan Smith, right? Special. Kyle Hamilton, special. There's dogs all over on that team. You look at Buffalo. You got Josh Allen. Outside of that, right? I mean, their best player on defense is probably Matt Milano, who's good, but it's an aging defense. The one unit on Buffalo that's, I would say, really high above average, close to exceptional recently has been their offensive line. I mean, they've paved the way for James Cook to have a great season. He's had over 1,000 yards. It's been great. It's helped Josh Allen out. I mean, you saw it especially with that play on 4th and 1 that Josh Allen was able to pull off on Sunday against Denver, having all the time in the world to sit back there and complete that touchdown pass to Shakir. I mean, it was incredible. You can only get that done with a great offensive line. Outside of that, there's not much special on Buffalo. There's a lot of special on Baltimore. And to illustrate what I'm saying with some stats here, there's 1 Pro Bowler on the Bills. There's 9 on the Ravens. So as a roster, from top to bottom, the Ravens are a far superior team. That's why they're favored by 1.5 going into Buffalo on Sunday. We're going to talk about our picks later on, of course. But that's why they're favored over Buffalo, is because that roster is so deep from top to bottom. Number 2, Josh Allen doesn't have what I like to call something like Derrick Henry is a security blanket. And I illustrated this in my video the other night about the Ravens, about how he makes that Ravens offense look so completely different. Because, there was a little while in time, Ryan, where running backs were being disparaged. They were being really undervalued. We're having people in the NFL circle and media talk about why it's not worth it to pay running backs. Well, you saw with Derrick Henry and Saquon, it is very much worth it to pay running backs because they make your offense look completely different. When you're Lamar Jackson, we all know this is a fact. He struggles with anxiety in these playoff games, and that's factual. He himself has come out and said that. Okay, Eric DaCosta, Ravens GM, makes a smart business decision, goes out, gets Derrick Henry. Why? For the regular season, yeah, sure. It's for now. That when Lamar gets into these games, he's a little nervous, he's a little tense, he's a little keyed up. You get that run game going a little bit, and then you give it to Lamar and have him do his thing. And Lamar is electrifying when he can do his thing. But he needs that. Josh Allen, He does it all on his own. He doesn't need a fallback. Josh Allen makes the Bills offense what it is himself. Nobody has done more with less this year than Josh Allen. That's a roster that without him, that Bills roster goes probably 7-10 or 6-11. Given roster plus coaching staff, which, by the way, Baltimore has a more superior coaching staff than Buffalo as well. You take Josh Allen out of that equation, that is a below 500 football team, without a doubt. But he himself elevated that team through his will, his talent, his football IQ and prowess. He elevated that team to a 13-4 football team, compared to Lamar Jackson's and the Ravens 12-5. I think that is pretty incredible. And so nobody has done more with less this year than Josh Allen. And when you define, it's the most valuable player, I want to know who is injecting the most value into their team. And again, this is part of the argument where I really hate, because I don't want to sound like I'm saying Lamar Jackson is not valuable, because he is. And that's why he's in the running right now. But Josh Allen, when you look at what he's done for Buffalo, the value that he has given to that offense, nobody, with the exception of maybe Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley, have given more value to their respective offenses than Josh Allen. That's why I give him my vote for MVP.
Impressive. I respect that soliloquy that you just did. So that last point you made, you think that, well, if I'm hearing that correctly, you think Josh Allen, Derrick Henry, and Saquon Barkley are ahead of Lamar Jackson as far as MVPs?
It's a very even race, Ryan. Like it's one of those things, kind of like the prediction for this Buffalo-Baltimore game, where I wake up and kind of have a different opinion on it every day, because all four guys have a really compelling case. And so one day I may wake up and say, hey, Josh deserves it. Another day I may wake up and be like, hey, Saquon has clearly showed why. Another, you watch what Derrick Henry did against Pittsburgh on Saturday, and you're like, that's the MVP. This Ravens team looks so much different. You watch Lamar Jackson, how he played against Cleveland, that touchdown pass he had, and you're like, that's the guy. He deserves it. Like it's if I have them over Lamar, it's by a very thin margin. But it really all depends by the day. I can't say definitively.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can say definitively that Lamar Jackson is the MVP. I mean, regardless if he wins or not, his stats just say that clearly he has had the better season. That's what the award means to me and others. And then the fact that he's the first team All-Pro over, and those are the same voters that vote for the MVP. So I would anticipate that, why wouldn't he get the MVP if he's first team All-Pro? And then secondly, when I think of MVPs, I think of people that's, elevating their team. When you think of MVPs in other leagues like NBA, you think of LeBron James, he's always elevating his team. Lamar Jackson has completely elevated his team. When you look at the stats, Rashad Bateman, for one, has had a career breakout season. Last season, he had like 357 receiving yards. Compared to this season, he's improved that by like 600. And he had one touchdown last season. Now this season he has 9. I mean, that's what an MVP. That's what MVP means to me. Someone who's elevating their team. Isaiah Likely was someone that really wasn't doing anything last year, and now he's one of the top producers at that tight end position. Like, why is that? Because Lamar puts him in great situations, along with the coordinator Monken, but along with Lamar Jackson's gracefulness in the pocket and his ability to get outside the pocket and make things happen. He gets these people open. I mean, Mark Andrews he's been a guy for years. We know this, but he doesn't have a true. I'm not going to disrespect Zay Flowers. He doesn't have a true number one receiver. Zay Flowers is amazing. But when we think of over the years, who has Josh Allen had every single year in and out? He's had Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs played with Josh Allen for 66 games, completed over 445 passes. I mean, Lamar Jackson, number one receiver over his career. Guess who it was? Marquise Brown. I know we're getting into the career stats, but I'm just saying we're looking at the body of work. Who's had the better team? I mean, yeah, Lamar has the better team this year on paper, but over time, like Lamar has made his team way better with less. I mean, the stats say is, Marquise Brown and Willie Snead are his leading receivers in his career. Yes, Stephon Diggs, who's a potential Hall of Famer, with Josh Allen his whole career. I mean, Lamar Jackson has had to work with far less. In this season, yeah, he has a running back who's a Hall of Famer, one of the best running backs of all time. Makes a huge difference. Josh Allen has James Cook. He's a top tier running back, but he's not to the level of Derrick Henry. But with that being said, I look at the stats, man. I look at how is he getting his teammates better. Another stat that people might not know: Lamar Jackson's schedule was a lot more difficult than Josh Allen's. First off, the division was something, like the AFC North is the hardest division in sports, especially this season. I mean, you got to play even the Browns. I mean, we can talk about the Browns all day, but you got to respect them. They're in the division. Lamar Jackson won 10 games this season against playoff teams. 10 games. I mean, Josh Allen's face, no disrespect to Josh Allen. I mean, he's an amazing quarterback. That's why he's top 2 in my book as far as MVP race. But he has the Dolphins, the Patriots. Who am I missing? And in the Jets in his division. I mean, that's who he has to see twice a year. I mean, Lamar Jackson's schedule was far more competitive, and his numbers speak for themselves. And we talk about playoffs. I know we'll get to that later. But over the last 2 seasons, Lamar Jackson is 3-1 in the playoffs. I mean, I know he had his struggles early on in his career. I'm sorry, he's 2-1, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception.
Lamar in the playoffs?
Yeah, the past 2 seasons, the past 2 years.
He's only 3-4 in his he's only 3-4 in his playoff career overall.
But he's 2-1 in the last 2 seasons. So like we're talking about recent. We're talking about recent.
It's only one, but I don't want to get you off your train of thought. It's only one.
Yeah.
He won one in 2020 against the Titans, and then one last year against the Texans. That's it. He didn't play
in the last 2 seasons. He's 2-1. So starting from last year against the Texans, lost to the Chiefs, and then this year he's 2-1 in the last 2 seasons. I'm talking about recency, and he's 7 touchdowns and 1 interceptions. I mean, obviously early on in his career he struggled, but the last 2 seasons. He's made that transition. That's my whole point there. We've seen him. He's answered the bell to all the critics. It seemed like a moving, carousel with him, but he's met it. His number, he has a 70% win percentage in his career. 70%. That's on the scale with Tom Brady, Joe Montana, Patrick Mahomes, Roger Staubach. Yes, I'm bringing Tom Brady into this. 70%, including the playoffs. So that's, I know I want it for a bit, but that's why Lamar Jackson he's an MVP, Brian.
Hey, I went for a while too, so I was expecting a lengthy rebuttal, and I thank you for that, Ryan. One thing that I want to say about your arguments: we love the AFC North on the era. It's the AFC North and the NFC North. Those are my 2 favorite divisions. They play in the cold. They're the most challenging divisions. I just love watching their games every Sunday. Every time they play, it's an absolute clash. We love the AFC North on this division. And so I love that you brought that point up about Lamar Jackson getting through the gauntlet of the AFC North and doing as well as he did, locking up that division this year on the last week, but they did it. And so that's major. That is a huge point in favor of Lamar Jackson. But you mentioned something early in your arguments about LeBron James, the amount of value that he gave to his teams back in the day and how that would qualify him for MVP pretty much every year. Don't you think that Josh Allen has got like this Bills team this year gives me 2018 Cavs vibes. right? Doing a lot with a lot less than what he's had in the past. What do you think about that?
That's a fair comparison. Fair. I don't
And so
totally agree with
when you
it,
look
but
at that value, I think that's MVP worthy.
like I said, I think it's fair. I don't, 100% agree with it, but I think it's fair. Look at it, man. Well, obviously he lost Stephon Diggs, his number one receiver, who played 66 games with him, over almost 6,000 receiving yards. I mean, you can lose someone like that. You expect to have regression with your team. Everyone expected them to have regression. But within his division, everyone collapsed. Jets collapsed. Dolphins collapsed. I'm sorry, but the Patriots are never a threat in that division. So when that happens, I mean, it just makes your life so much easier. And with that being said, I mean, yeah, he worked with Shakir. He had a rookie sensation, Keon Coleman. Knox, Kincaid is a dog. I mean, James Cook, he has weapons all around him that have proven themselves. I mean, he's had a lot to work with. He had a lot to work with. He has one person he's missing is Stephon. I mean, Stephon Diggs is a huge piece, but I don't think he's missing that much.
That's a major piece. And the reason why I know that is because Stephon Diggs had 29% of Josh Allen's targets in 2023. Next up was Kincaid at 17%. This year, the most targeted receiver was Khalil Shakir with 19% of Josh Allen's targets. And they use the ground game a lot more this year. It's a more complementary style of offense that the Bills have used this year, but it's worked to their benefit. And I think that's another reason, that's another thing that will lead people to jump onto the Lamar train over Josh Allen, because they'll see those stats and say, wow, they're that much more impressive. They've run a different style of offense in Baltimore than they've run in Buffalo this year. The main focus in Buffalo has been efficiency, because in past years, it was, I mean, Josh Allen looked like Brett Favre out there, gunslinger. I mean, multiple seasons, well over 3,000, 4,000 yards, over 30 touchdown passes. That's what the standard was these past couple of years. This year is 28-6, but it was Josh Allen's fewest picks in his career at 6. And so the focus was on efficiency this year. So I think a lot of people look at that and like, well, his numbers aren't as high as Lamar Jackson's. There's a reason behind that, because that was the Bills' strategy. They wanted to hold on to the ball and make sure that they're doing something with it in the red zone. So it's kind of tough to base on the numbers. That's why I say value. Josh Allen has protected the ball amazing this year. And most of his drives, when he gets inside 25-yard line, he's going to score. And he has put the Bills in that position to get those 14 wins. It's been incredible. I also want to ask you something here as well. Pertaining to Lamar Jackson's MVP voting.
Yeah.
Lamar won last year, and deservingly so. He got it. Don't you think that voter fatigue is going to set in a little bit this year? Like, it's hard to vote somebody like Tom Brady never won back-to-back. Aaron Rodgers never won back-to-back. Like, how are you going to give somebody that doesn't have a Super Bowl yet back-to-back MVPs?
I mean, how could you give it to someone? I mean, yeah, voter fatigue will play a factor, I think, in most people's eyes. It seems like it's played a factor in yours, in others. I don't think him not having a Super Bowl does much for that argument, because Josh Allen doesn't have a Super Bowl either. So I don't think it really matters in that situation. It's a regular season award. It's a regular season award. Why don't they have it at the end of the playoffs? I mean,
it should be at the end of the playoffs.
I mean, I would agree with that 100%. But they have it, they've already made the decision. The votes are already in. And so, vote fatigue could play a factor. I'm looking at the stats alone and the impact that we see on Sundays and just the improvement that we've seen from last year. If he got the MVP last year with his stats, and they're now far more improved and he's answered the call to everything, that's why I feel like he's going to win again. Now, Josh Allen has had a sensational season, 28-6. And a lot of the stats we don't see on the stat sheet, just the contribution to his team that he's made is undeniable for sure. I just think it's all about, in this award, stats, records play a huge factor in what you see on Sundays. I mean, those MVP type plays we see from Lamar week in and week out, I think it's I think that speaks for itself. I mean, obviously Josh Allen has those plays, but Lamar has more this year, and I think that's what it comes down to.
I don't know if he's had more.
You disagree with that?
I wouldn't say that he has more, and also it kind of goes back to what I was saying, to where like that Bills offense isn't as flashy as it's been, but
It's not. Yeah.
it's been productive, and
I mean, his whole line,
it's been incredibly effective.
like you mentioned earlier, his offensive line gives him so much time, and his time of possession this season has been lopsided compared to his opponents. I mean, you look at last week with the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos had 18 minutes of total time possession for the whole game. I mean, that's less than half. Like that's less than a quarter almost. That's a little over a quarter. And then obviously, Josh Allen and the Bills had it for like 40 minutes. I mean, that speaks for itself. I mean, they control the ball on offense. It's not flashy per se. And with that reason, like I said earlier, that's why Lamar should get that 3-peat.
I don't think you should give an award to somebody just because they have a different style of offense. I know we're going to disagree on that one. I don't think that you should give to somebody else just because they play in a different system that value different things on offense.
I think it should be awarded just for stats, and
it's got to be more than stats. Like you got to
stats and value.
You got to give it context. You got it with this one. You got to go beyond the stats to see what Josh Allen is doing, because the way that he's elevated what's around him this year is, I think that the last time I've seen something like this has been like, I can't even think of one. Like it's been a while since I've seen somebody elevate a team like what he has around him to 13-4 and clinching the division in November. And granted, it's a much less competitive division than the North, but clinching the division in November, I can't remember last time I've seen that either. Like they had it. It was a wrap right after Thanksgiving, which is
I haven't seen that either.
I also want to say here too. This is a point I want to make. Ravens wide receivers, they average 15.5 yards separation every play. That's by far first in the NFL by a landslide. So that has given Lamar windows that not only he hasn't seen in his entire career, but no other quarterback in the NFL has seen those kinds of windows this year. A lot of that has to do with, I mean, the Ravens have a pretty good offensive line, but when you have somebody like Derrick Henry you've got to worry about, and Lamar Jackson's mobility, that's going to help receivers get open more. But it's those receivers have an average of 15.5 yards separation. Great windows for them to throw into. The Bills average 12.6, which is right in the middle of the league, 15th. So Josh Allen is putting up those incredible stats that he has this year. Won 13 games with having an average separation of 12.6 yards, ranking 15th in the NFL. The Bills, I also want to remind everyone of this because, when you're in January, it's hard to remember back into, August, July. I mean, it's hard to remember what the conversations were back then. But I placed myself back there, February, March last year. And the outlook was that the Bills were going to take a step back. And maybe even the Dolphins were going to win the AFC East. I predicted the Dolphins, regrettably so. The Bills won in a landslide. The perception around the Ravens was that they were going to cruise to the AFC North title and that they were one of, if not the Chiefs' biggest competitor this year. And so because the Ravens added, right, Derrick Henry, revolutionized their offense. The Bills had to subtract everywhere on the field. They did not add. They couldn't afford to add. They had to subtract everywhere because they had over 40 million in dead cap. They were at one time. Actually, this is a funny story. When I was at Alabama, we had the Bills GM Brandon Beane come and talk to our class, and when he was there, the Bills, their salary cap was almost 40 mil in the red, and so they had to liquidate they had to get rid of guys. A lot of them. Stephon Diggs, Mitch Morse, Jordan Poyer, guys that have been there forever, who were the heart and soul of that team. They had to get rid of them. And so a lot of like the vocal leaders in that locker room were gone. Josh Allen, this is leadership. Josh Allen had to step up and take control this year. And granted, that's expected out of him as an elite quarterback. But the fact that he was able to do that with a team that had very little to spend this offseason and bring that team to 13 wins, incredible. Not only this, and also to say, like, they were the only team to really beat the Chiefs this year. Right. I mean, the Broncos did it in week 18. Like, who gives a shit? That was week 18 that Carson Wentz starting. Shit. The Bills did it in November when it was the two AFC Titans going up against each other in Orchard Park. I mean, I think they could do it again. Josh Allen is also the first player in NFL history with 40 or more total touchdowns in a season for 5 consecutive years. Never been done before. That's landmark. That is sensational. And Buffalo has also led the AFC in points per game. With that offense I've been talking about, that's very average. You know, James Cook, Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid. I like those guys, but there's no Zay Flowers. There's no Derrick Henry on that offense. But yet they led the league in points per game. They led the AFC in points per game with 30.1. Not the Ravens, not the Chiefs, not the Bengals, the Bills. What do you got to say about that?
Yeah, you made a few points there. I mean, you talked about, you know, how you thought the Ravens would dominate their division. I mean, first and foremost, they got a first-year defensive coordinator, so they're trying to get the pieces together on that side of the ball. Another, you know, you add a whole different piece into the mix with Derrick Henry. I mean, it takes a while for those things to gel together, and I think we saw that. I mean, them going 0-2, and then you have those, you know, weird losses to no-name teams, Raiders, Browns, you know, just, you know, I mean, odd games that you wouldn't expect from a team that you think is superior than their opponent. And that just comes from, in my opinion, not being used to who you're playing with. The defensive coordinator, first year with the guys, I mean, he's been on the staff, but, you know, he's leading the whole defense in the back end. I mean, you just don't know you don't know what's in your utility belt until you get through the fire. And I think those losses helped them out. I mean, the Raiders, you know, very weird loss. Eagles, very weird game for them as well. So those things all play a factor. I mean, I know the Bills lost a bunch of people, but that's like we had, you know, Josh Allen's been playing with Sean McDermott since his beginning of his career. I mean, you see guys like that all the time. Tom Brady, Drew Brees, even Lamar Jackson staying with the same head coach. I mean, you don't expect those things to change. It's like a machine. And so those things, I think that's even. I don't think that makes a difference. You know, I don't think that edges out Josh Allen compared to Lamar Jackson. I mean, you lose big pieces. Yeah, we see the Stephon Diggs piece that's lost, but it's still a perfectly ran organization, one of the best ran organizations in the NFL. So you don't expect those guys to just fall off a cliff like you see other teams do, like the Jets and the Dolphins. I mean, you're making that face there. Like, what's your response? I said something that you don't.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm pulling the Office Space line there. Yeah. So you know, TPS reports.
Let's hear
it. what I'm going to say is, so the NFL report cards came out last year, right? They ranked the organizations. The Ravens were like Ravens, Vikings. I want to say Broncos up in the conversation as well. They rank an A in everything. Like, it's one of the best organizations in the NFL. The Bills, and that's what I'm saying, Josh Allen has made the organization look really good. The Bills are like, they're slightly above average as an organization. Like, there were some A's in there, some B's, some B minuses.
I mean, for the most part, they're sharply.
The Ravens, Lamar is doing this with arguably the best organization in the AFC.
For the most part, Bills are a sharply ranked organization. That's why they're always in the playoffs.
They're
Well,
good, not the Ravens.
has Josh Allen? I mean, they've been to the AFC Championship many times. I mean, that's been the downfall of the Bills lately. I mean, you got to run into the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, they've been in that position for a reason. Every team can't say they've been to the playoffs, 4 or 5 consecutive years. The Bills can say that, and that tells you a lot about the organization. I mean, even the Ravens have missed the playoffs since Lamar's been there.
There's a reason why. So hear this out. The Ravens were started, and I don't want to go into like a whole history lesson here, but the Ravens became a team in '96. They've won 2 Super Bowls. They've only missed the playoffs a handful of times in that span. We didn't see the Bills make the playoffs until we were 17 years old.
Yeah.
And so the Ravens were a machine before Lamar even got there. Not take away anything that Lamar has done, but they were a machine before we got there. The Bills were a machine because Josh Allen got there. And that's a difference in dude right there too. I think that's a distinction I got to make. If you want to go on that road, that's a distinction I got to make.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that'll be a whole other conversation right there, Brian. I disagree. I'm not disagreeing with Josh Allen's greatness. I am disagreeing with that take and who's meant more to a franchise. I mean, we can't fault for the people that came ahead of those guys because, yeah, I mean, the Ravens have been better since they've been a team. But when we look at it, Lamar Jackson has just been sensational since he got into the league. I mean, first off, 32nd overall pick gets taken down by he was a Heisman Trophy winner, the best college football player in the country. He gets drafted 32 pick overall. Disrespect, first off. Gets picked up by the Ravens, sat behind Joe Flacco, gets put into the fire his rookie season in the playoffs. I mean, and he's just answered all the calls, but he just gets criticized every year for not winning the playoffs, quote unquote. And then, but Josh Allen hasn't won either.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point that both have gotten in the same spot. Haven't won. I don't want to sit there and disparage Lamar because his story is incredible. So is Josh's. And so like I don't really I hate getting in like I said earlier, I hate getting in the position where I'm taking anything away from either of those guys because they're 2 of the best in the league right now, who unfortunately have to go through number 15 and Andy Reid every year. It's like having the Patriots in the NFL all over again. And so it puts the same ceiling on both of those 2 teams. And so
but it's all about Sunday, and I know you're gonna get to it, but it's all about Sunday.
It's all about Sunday. We are going to get to that. The way that I want to structure this here is I want to let you have a final point, a final verdict. I'll have a final verdict, and then we'll make our predictions. Does that sound good to you?
Sounds great.
All right.
I'll get to these predictions. Yeah, these predictions.
You got your final verdict for Lamar for MVP. Here's the final pitch. Let's hear it.
My final pitch. So, I mean, as I said earlier, the stats speak for themselves. I mean, every single category, efficiency, QBR rating, passing yards, passing touchdowns, interceptions, rushing yards, his ability to enhance his receivers have been second to none this season. Like, sure, his receivers, quote unquote, get more open. That stat is interesting because who knows what defense they're playing against. They could be facing a man-to-man defense. The Bills could be facing a zone defense and vice versa. Like, who knows how they're getting that separation. I don't think the receivers are any much better than the Bills at all. So I'm not sure if that stat is you got to read between the lines on that stat. So I don't discredit Lamar Jackson for his receivers getting 5 yards more open than the Bills. He's still allowing them to complete success and have far better seasons than what they did in the past, i.e. Rashard Bateman and Nelson Aguilar. First off, I'm not going to go on a rabbit hole with Nelson Aguilar here, but Nelson Aguilar was the worst hated person in the city of Philadelphia. And he comes to Baltimore and completely revamps his career, and he's getting targets. Lamar Jackson's finding him open, and Mark Andrews is a dog completely. So he just elevated his whole team, and this is the year that he's going to win a championship this year and put everything to bed, and he's going to win his 3rd MVP this year. But those stats alone make him the best quarterback. I mean, outside of Patrick Mahomes, but it makes him the MVP this season. And he's on the best team right now, ahead of the Bills. And then we'll see when it gets to KC what happens. But I mean, to me, both guys are amazing. Both guys had a hell of a season. I mean, I just look at those stats and I say, it just pops out to me. Not only on paper, but watching those games live. I mean, Lamar Jackson has just played better.
He's been special. He's been really special. It's been a blessing to watch both those guys this year. I really do want to acknowledge that. Before I get into my final verdict, I've got a question for you.
I'm listening.
Did you know?
I'm trying to have an answer for you.
Did you know who Khalil Shakir was before?
I did.
In Buffalo.
I did.
Where?
I drafted on my fantasy team.
No, like when he was in college.
No.
Did you know who he was?
No.
That's because Josh Allen helped elevate his game. He is Josh Allen's. Nobody knew who Khalil Shakir was last year, 2023. He is now Josh Allen's top targeted wide receiver. That's growth, and that's being on the same team as one of I don't want to say the best because Patrick Mahomes, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and the guy who I think deserves MVP this year. Here is my final verdict. The Bills' offense is averaging 2.97 points per offensive drive this season. The Ravens are averaging 2.82 points per offensive drive this season. The Bills' offensive pieces, like I illustrated earlier, they're not as good as the Ravens, but yet they're scoring more on their offensive drives. Therefore, the Bills' offense, from that stat alone, has been better than the Ravens' offense. It is statistically proven right there. And it's because of Josh Allen. That right there is the icing on the cake. That's my mic drop. That is why Josh Allen deserves to win MVP. If he doesn't, all respects and appreciation for Lamar. If it's Saquon, all respect and appreciation, same exercise for Derrick Henry. But that stat right there is why my vote goes to Josh Allen. But I know we got predictions to get to here as well. And quite frankly, my ass has got to eat here in a few minutes too. I got to heat up them B-dubs wings from yesterday. I don't know why I want to freaking B-dub.
On a B-dub tangent right now, man.
I know. It's that sauce. We don't have Publix here. I can't shake my wings and freaking sauce because there's no markets here that make good enough sauce. But what's your prediction for Sunday?
I think it's going to be a hard-fought game. And, oh, my God, we didn't even get into the head-to-head matchup. Oh, my God, 35-10, week 4.
We didn't Amari Cooper?
We didn't get into that. We didn't get into that.
The one before we had Amari Cooper?
We didn't get into week 4 of the season, 35-10. We didn't get into that, Brian. I mean, that was the main point, but that leads to my prediction. I mean, first and foremost, it's going to be a hard-fought game. It's going to be cold. Regular season doesn't matter at all at this point. Week 4, that was years ago in my books. Like, that does not matter at all. The thing that does matter is what's happening right now. Who I think the hottest team is right now in the playoffs is the Ravens. On the AFC side is the Ravens. And my predictions, Ravens are going to win by 10 points. It's going to be a slugfest. My final score, 31-21, Ravens. I think Lamar Jackson has a sensational game, at least 100 rushing yards and about 200 passing yards. Very efficient, maybe a pick here or there, but very efficient. And I think Derrick Henry is going to carry his own weight. I mean, he's not going to have the same stats he did last game or the first game when he played the Bills. I mean, he went crazy against them, but he's going to have at least 100 rushing yards. If he has 20 carries for 100 rushing yards, like that's gonna be the deciding factor. I mean, you have quote unquote two running backs right there, one that can pass as well. So it just makes them so difficult to defend. And with that being said, I think the Ravens are going to pull it off, 31-21.
All of your points make perfect sense, and I could see that outcome happening because like I said earlier in the show, I think the Ravens have a better team. I think they're more layered, more deep, more talented team than Buffalo. So I can definitely see that outcome happening. Like if the Ravens win on Sunday, I'm not going to be shocked at all. I have thought about this for a while. I've ruminated on this game for a while. I already have all my other predictions made for the other three. I had them made pretty quickly. This one I've had to think about and go back and forth quite a bit. One day woke up, I was picking Bills. Another day woke up, I was picking Ravens. At the end of the day, and it's less about the Ravens and more about the Bills. I can't pick against Buffalo in the divisional round. I can't do it. It's gonna be It's a night game. It's gonna be 18 degrees, snow flurries. It's their weather, even though the Ravens were in the all whites. It's gonna clean that uniform combo. But I am going Bills to win this game just because I think they're gonna have that home environment on their side. I think this is gonna be a classic. I actually I think that this is a game. Sometimes you get games like Oregon, Ohio State a few weeks ago. That just didn't really live up to the hype. I think this one lives up to the hype. I think it's a classic. The Bills' defense has not been great recently. I think Lamar and Derrick Henry are going to have a field day running all over it. But I think Josh Allen's going to be fantastic throwing the ball. I think he's going to find some mismatches at times. The Khalil Shakir has been a reliable target. Amari Cooper, Dalton Kincaid is always a go-to. I think that he'll be able to expose enough just through his own abilities and being able to spread that offense out that I think that Buffalo pulls this off 34 to 28. There it is. 34 to 28. Buffalo pulls it off. One possession, riveting game. There's my prediction.
And I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, solid pick. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a low-scoring game either. I do know each team, they like having control of the ball.
Yeah.
So they're probably going to limit the possessions. I know the Ravens had the ball for a lot last week. I know obviously they scored a lot of points, and the Bills scored a lot of points last week against the Broncos, but they had the ball for virtually the whole game. So I think they're going to try to limit possessions. I think each team gets no more than 10 drives, 5 and 5.5, and they just try to chew the clock up, run the ball. I don't know. We'll see. But it has a chance to be low scoring as well. But yeah,
that is legit. Both teams are going to try to hog the ball. So I wouldn't be surprised. And then with it being cold too, I wouldn't be surprised if it does end up being a low scoring game after all. But I appreciate you coming on, Ryan. This has been an awesome debates, an awesome conversation. Let me know who y'all think won the debate in the comment section below. But Ryan, thank you again for coming on The Era. It's been everything I thought would be and more.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me, man. It's been a dream turned to reality. We were talking about it all the way June, July, shooting the shit, and now we're here on The Era, man. So it's been a pleasure. I appreciate you, Captain.
It finally came into fruition. The Era. This is where dreams become a reality. Ryan, thank you for coming on today. Have a great day. Can't wait for Sunday.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it, man.